Thank you, Mr. Klein. The chair recognizes Mr. Case for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, sorry for my voice. I'd like to talk to you about an industry that is critical to my state and to the country, and that is travel and tourism. As you know, travel and tourism has been among the most heavily impacted industries in our entire world, and certainly in this country, because of COVID-19. Travel and tourism before COVID-19 was our largest service sector industry. It was somewhere around 27% of our total services exports. People want to visit this country, and that's an export industry. And it was 10% of total exports. I think that figure often surprises people because they think of exports as being more manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. But travel and tourism is a critical export industry. We seem to be recovering in it, and in my Hawaii, travel and tourism is somewhere around 25% of our total economy, and much more if you take the magnifying effects of that. And of travel and tourism in Hawaii, somewhere around 1/3 is international travel from places like Japan, but also elsewhere in Asia. And the fact of the matter is that although it seems domestic travel and tourism is coming back pretty well, that's not an export industry. And what we are not seeing come back is international travel and tourism. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But the one that I want to focus on in particular with you is the fact that what is really hampering international travel and tourism is the inconsistency in admission or entry and return requirements around the world for international travelers. And so, for example, somebody could come from Japan into Hawaii. They would still have to pass our still existing restrictions as to conditions of entry, but they would have a different set of requirements going back to Japan. And so, although they may be able to come into Hawaii fairly easily or anywhere else in the country, they couldn't go home. And of course, every country needs sovereignty. Every country needs to write its own rules, and every country has done a different calculation throughout COVID-19. But the fact of the matter is that the inconsistency from country to country is what is creating a lot of the hindrance and obstacles to recovering international travel and tourism. And you, of course, are deeply involved in this. You're chair of the Travel and Tourism Advisory Council. Department of Commerce has your own international travel and tourism office, or travel and tourism office. What say you about travel and tourism and how to get us back to some kind of normal, and how specifically to crack through some of these restrictions out there?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. And I understand how important travel and tourism is, for your state in particular. So first I'll say the administration's committed to a coordinated and complete recovery from COVID. And you're pointing out the coordination part of it. I will tell you that I recently convened 2 weeks ago, the Travel and Tourism Board, which I, oversee. And I heard a lot of concern about the CDC's international testing requirements and the fact that the United States is unusual in requiring the testing to come here. So I can assure you, I raised those concerns on behalf of the industry within the administration and conveyed the concerns I met with the Shisha and conveyed those concerns. So I think we should just continue to work together, and I'm happy to meet with you separately, so that we can do everything we need to do, so that we can get international travel back where we need it to be.
Yeah, I mean, and that is true. The fact of the matter is that we impose a double requirement on entry into this country, whereas many of the other countries in the world don't have that anymore. They would accept a vaccination, a card as comfort enough without an actual test. And so we're doing ourselves some harm in doing that. Now, if there's a good scientific reason for doing it, then we should do it. But the fact of the matter is that both federally and at state and county government levels, we are accepting far less of a requirement to go into a restaurant, to go from one state to another state. And so the question does have to be asked, is this too much under these circumstances? But let me ask you about the second point, and that is trying to get to some kind of an harmonized understanding and agreement across the world of what actually will be required to go from country to country, come into this country, or for that matter, to go home. If there have been discussions within Commerce about coordinating that around the world?
Yes, yes. As I said, we're committed to a coordinated recovery, and we are working on that. The COVID work of the administration is being driven out of the White House, but as I said, I am involved in definitely raising the concerns of travel and tourism to the administration.
Okay, thank you. I would love to work with you on that. And then let me switch gears and go back to the ranking member's questions on the Indo-Pacific in particular. You have proposed in your budget to increase the International Trade Administration's funding and authority for the projection of U.S. Foreign commercial officers and other personnel throughout the Indo-Pacific and elsewhere in the world to enhance the export possibilities from this country to other countries and vice versa for that matter. And I commend you for that. I support that. I want to say in the same spirit that when you talk about the Indo-Pacific, please don't just think about the rim countries like Japan or Indonesia or Australia or New Zealand. There are some 30 jurisdictions throughout the Pacific Islands themselves, many of them independent countries. And the one thing they want from us, above all, aside from assistance with climate change related consequences, is help with economic development. And so the fact is that I'm a member and co-chair and founder of the Pacific Islands Caucus. We introduced a bill called the Blue Pacific Act, which much of which is in the Competes USICA Act at this point, and it proposed exactly this, to enhance our trade related expertise out in these countries themselves. So I would just like to re-emphasize that to you. Don't forget about the Pacific Island countries themselves, where an investment that for many other countries in the world would not be a significant one is literally an investment that can make a huge difference in their own economies.
Yeah, I hear you loudly and clearly, and I agree. By the way, this afternoon I'm hosting an event with all the leaders of the ASEAN countries. And anyway, we're out of time, but I agree and I hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Case. And the chair notes at this point that during the questioning of Mr. Case, the clock actually stopped for about 60 seconds. It's a reminder to us all never to underestimate the resourcefulness of people from Hawaii.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
This time, the